Hello everyone, I hope all of you are safe in the middle of the crisis of COVID-19. In today's lecture, we are going to analyze the certified copies of my IPCC paper of November 2016, Costing and Financial Management, wherein I have scored a total of 95 marks out of 100. Let's analyze how I wrote the answers, how I was able to score the maximum marks, and where did I lose 5 marks, and what are the areas of improvement and what are the learnings by this answer sheet. Okay, let's discuss all the questions which I have solved, namely 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, 7. 6 and 7, I think they are the theoretical questions, and the first 5 are the practical questions. Let's see what questions I've solved first and which are the questions which I've solved next in order to score the maximum marks which I've gained. Okay, let's begin with question number 1. Question number 1. The following figures are available from the records of ABC Company as at 31st March. Sales and profit is given. The PV ratio and total fixed expenses are required to be computed. The break-even level of sales is required to be computed, and the amount of sales required to earn a profit of rupees 70 lakhs. These are the information which we are required to compute. This is a very easy question. I'll quickly show you what I had written in my certified copy so that you can get an idea as to how to present your answers in the examination. Okay, so the formula of PV ratio is nothing but change in profit upon change in sales. Therefore, PV ratio is what? Change in profit upon change in sales. Both the year's profits and sales have been given, and the answer comes to 30%. Now, I have calculated the fixed cost. If you read the question, they have asked us to calculate the break-even level of sales. Before that, we are required to calculate the total fixed expenses. So it's also fairly easy. Considering year 2016, sales minus total cost is what? Profit. Thus, the total cost is what? Sales minus profit, which is 200 minus 30, that is 170 lakhs. The PV ratio in the question is given as 30%. Since the profit volume ratio is 30%, we can imply that the variable cost ratio is 70%. Why? Because the contribution sales ratio is what? Contribution upon sales into 100. If that is 30%, it clearly means that your contribution is 30% of your sales, which implies that your variable cost is 70% of your sales. Since your variable cost is 70% of sales, we can easily compute the variable cost by multiplying 70% with the total amount of sales. Thus, the variable cost amounts to rupees 140 lakhs, and therefore the fixed cost would be what? 170 minus 140, because we have the total cost as 170. See, this is the total cost of 170. We subtract 140 from the total cost to get the fixed cost of 30 lakhs. If you perform the activity for another year, you would get the same answer. Then we are required to compute the break-even sales, which is nothing but fixed cost upon PV ratio, that is 30 lakhs. This is the answer which we computed in our earlier subpart, divided by the PV ratio. This is given in the question to get the amount of break-even sales. So rupees 100 lakhs is the amount of break-even sales. And lastly, we are required to compute the sales if the fixed cost plus desired profit is this much, which is given in the question. The formula for computing sales is what? Fixed cost plus desired profit whole upon PV ratio. How this formula has been derived, it's very simple. If you draw an income statement, it would be sales less variable cost gives me contribution, less fixed cost gives me profit. Okay, so what they have done, they have simply added the desired profit to the fixed cost and divided it by the PV ratio to get the amount of sales. PV ratio is what? Contribution upon sales into 100. So this, like, the meaning of this particular formula is that the desired profit has to be added to the fixed cost in order to get the total contribution. So fixed cost plus desired profit, if you transfer FC this side, it would be profit plus fixed cost. So contribution is what? Fixed cost plus profit, and this when divided by the CS ratio, that is the PV ratio, would give you the amount of sales. Okay, I hope the derivation of this formula is clear. It's very easy, and by this formula we get the amount of sales as rupees 333.33 lakhs. Okay, so let's see how I was able to score marks in this examination, particularly for each subpart. I've scored 2 marks in subpart 1, 1 mark for fixed cost calculation. I've scored 1 mark here and 1 mark in subpart 2 and subpart 3 respectively. Okay, so this is how the marking has been done by ICAI. Let's solve the next question. Question number 1b. Supreme Limited is a manufacturer of energy savings bulb. To manufacture the finished product, 1 unit of component LED is required. Annual requirement of component LED is 72,000 units, the cost being 300 per unit. Other relevant details for the year are given as follows. The cost of placing an order is given, carrying cost is given, this is the ordering cost, this is the carrying cost. Then the lead time is given, maximum, minimum, average, and emergency lead time is given. And finally, the maximum, minimum, as well as the average consumption is also given. Okay, we are required to calculate ROQ, that is reorder quantity, ROL, reorder level, minimum stock level, maximum stock level, and danger level. I would quickly show you my certified copy because the suggested answers and my answers in certified copies are almost the same. That's why I'm not showing you the answer as per the suggested answers, because it is going to be the same as it is in my certified copy. See, the formula of ROQ is what? Root 2AO upon C. Okay, O is nothing but the ordering cost, which is given in the question, A is the annual demand, and C is the carrying cost, which is 300 into 12%. Once you compute the calculation on your calculator, you would get the ROQ as 3000 units. I've scored 1 mark over here. Then ROL. ROL is what? Maximum consumption into maximum lead time. So that is the reorder level. At 8000 units, the interpretation is that at 8000 units, you'll have to reorder once again. So maximum consumption is given in the question, maximum lead time is given in the question. You simply have to substitute both the amounts to fetch 1 mark. Minimum stock level. This formula for minimum stock level is what? Reorder level minus average consumption into average lead time. We are assuming that on an average, how much consumption into lead time is taking place, we subtract from the reorder level to get the minimum stock level. This is the minimum stock level that we should have. Okay, reorder level is 8000 units minus average consumption into average lead time is also given in the question, and the answer to this is 3800 units. The maximum stock levels formula is what? Reorder level plus reorder quantity minus minimum consumption into minimum lead time. Okay, because of lack of time, I wouldn't be deriving the formula which I've already mentioned in the certified copy. The derivation of this formula would be altogether a different lesson, so I would be covering that in a different video. So maximum stock level is what? ROL plus ROQ minus minimum consumption into minimum lead time. Once you solve this equation, you have the ROL computed above, you have the ROQ computed above, minimum and minimum consumption and minimum lead time is already given in the question. You get the answer as 9400 units. And lastly, what is the danger level? It is nothing but the average consumption into lead time for emergency purchase. And this is nothing but 1500 units. This is the lead time for emergency purchase. So 1500 units are danger level, which means that these units, there can be a position of stock out if these units are not bought. Okay, so this is how I had presented in my certified copy. I hope you are able to understand where I have gained marks and where I'm losing marks. I've not lost mark till now. I'll just tell you where I've lost marks. Okay, so every question had 1 mark. So every question was of 1 mark itself. You have to write the formula. Once you've written the formula, you have to write the figures and you have to present it very neatly and cleanly so that you fetch the maximum marks. Let's solve the next question. Yeah, here I have lost marks. I'll just show you I've lost 2 marks in this question. ABC company's equity share is quoted in the market at rupees 25 per share currently. The company pays a dividend of rupees 2 per share and the investors market expects a growth rate of 6% per year. Okay, remember, now here they have told that investors market expects a growth rate of 6% per year. Here I made a mistake. You are required to compute the company's cost of equity capital. If the growth rate is 8% per annum, calculate the indicated market price per share. If the company issues 10% debentures of 100 each and realizes 96 per debenture, while the debentures are redeemable after 12 years at a premium of 12%, that is 112, what will be the cost of debenture? This is fairly easy question. Tax rate is given as 50%. I'll quickly show you my certified copy and what mistake I had made in this particular question. The cost of equity is what? D1 upon P naught plus G. So that's quite simple. The K is D1 upon P naught plus G. Now D1 here should be the dividend which is already given in the question. See, I have written over here, it has been assumed that the dividend of rupees 2 per share is inclusive of the growth rate. Why? Because they had used the word expects to pay the dividend. I had also written an alternative answer wherein I had assumed that if the growth rate is not incorporated, then the answer would be different. Meaning that alternatively, if it is assumed that it is exclusive of growth rate, then the K would be different. So I have multiplied the growth rate over here and I have computed an alternative answer. So this is the cost of equity. Now this is where I made the mistake. Okay, I didn't make a mistake, to be very frank. I had written the assumption, but then this assumption was not valid at all. So we have to compute the cost of equity if the growth rate now changes to 8% per annum. So what I did, I multiplied 6%, that is the initial growth rate, to the dividend, and I used the 8%, that is revised growth rate, in the denominator. This is the revised growth rate, this is the earlier growth rate. This is the mistake which I made. I had to use 8% in the numerator as well as the denominator. I had written an assumption that it has been assumed here that the growth rate of 8% per annum does not affect the dividend, as it has already been calculated at growth of 6% per annum. This was a clearly wrong assumption which I had used in my examination. Because of this assumption, I lost 2 marks in this particular question. Okay, I hope you have understood what mistake I made. You have to use 8% over here because the growth rate has now been changed to 8%. You can use different growth rate in numerator and denominator. The growth rates have to be same in the numerator as well as the denominator. Let's quickly have a look at the suggested answers what they have given for the answer to question number C. If you see, it is what, 2 into 1.08 whole upon 0.1448 minus 0.08. So this is 1.08 and this is 0.08, which means that the revised growth rates have been used. And this was the mistake which I made in my examination, because of which I lost 2 marks. Okay. Let's solve question number 3. That was also a very easy question. All the data was given in the question. We simply had to substitute the data in the formula in order to compute the cost of debt. The cost of debt is nothing but interest into 1 minus tax plus redemption value minus net proceeds whole upon n whole upon redemption value plus net proceeds whole upon 2. Okay, you have to learn this formula. You simply have to substitute the figures to get the final answer of 6.09%, and this is how I was able to fetch 2 out of 2 marks in this particular question. Okay, so I've only scored 3 marks in this question out of 5 marks. So this is 3 out of 5, and here I have lost 2 marks in my answer sheet. Now remaining 3 marks I have lost in theory. I would quickly show you where I have lost the remaining 3 marks. Let's proceed with the next question. Yeah, question number D. The following information is related to YZ Company Limited for the year ended 31st March 2016. Equity share capital is given, bonds are given, sales fixed cost, financial leverage, profit volume ratio, and income tax is given. We are required to calculate the operating leverage, the combined leverage, and the earnings per share. You have to show your calculations up to 2 decimal points. Again, this is also a very easy question. I'll quickly show you how I wrote this answer in my answer sheet. See, first I gave the heading as income statement, then I mentioned that the rupees are in lakhs because it was easier for me to compute in lakhs itself rather than writing the zeros. The sales have been given, we just have to compute the income statement. Okay, we have to draw the income statement. Once we draw the income statement, we can easily compute the ratios. The sales is given, variable cost is balancing figure because we have the PV ratio, so the amount of contribution can be computed by multiplying the sales by the PV ratio. Subtract the fixed cost given in the question to get earnings before interest and tax. Subtract the interest. Interest is nothing but an interest of 12% bonds, and there is an other interest which is a hidden adjustment. I'll show you the working note one. You get the earnings before tax, subtract tax to get the earnings after tax, divided by the number of shares to compute the earnings per share. We have to compute the operating leverage. Operating leverage is what? Contribution upon EBIT. This is the formula of operating leverage. Simply substituting the values of contribution and EBIT, we get an operating leverage of 1.43. Then we were required to compute the combined leverage. Combined leverage is what? Operating leverage into financial leverage. First, let's compute the financial leverage. Financial leverage is EBIT upon EBT. Financial leverage was given in the question as 1.49. 1.49 is what? EBIT upon EBT. Thus, we get the amount of earnings before tax as 10.86 lakhs. As EBIT minus interest is equal to EBT, there will be other fixed financial cost as well. This is an important statement and a hidden adjustment which was there. Since EBIT minus interest is EBT, there is other fixed financial cost. And what is the other fixed financial cost? It is nothing but EBIT, that is 16.182 lakhs, minus 37 into 12%, which is the interest cost, minus other fixed cost, which is the earnings before tax of 10.86 lakhs. And the other fixed financial costs amount to 0.882 lakhs. Okay, this was a hidden adjustment, and it was very much necessary to find out that there's a hidden adjustment in this question. If you wouldn't have found out this, you would have lost 1 or 2 marks in the examination. We already have the financial leverage with us, which is given in the question, multiplied by the operating leverage to get the combined leverage of 2.13. Earnings per share is what, rupees 1.3, which we have already computed in our earlier part. This is the earnings per share. Okay, we can also compute the earnings per share by the formula of combined leverage, but then I didn't find that I didn't find it that useful. So because we have already computed the earnings per share in the earlier part, and therefore I just copied the answer from that particular answer in the earlier part. Okay, I hope this analysis is useful for all of you. So I was able to score 5 out of 5 marks in this question, and there was a hidden adjustment in this question. So next question is question number 2. Let's solve question number 2 now. A company has introduced a new product and marketed 20,000 units. Variable cost of the product is rupees 20 per unit and fixed overheads are rupees 3,20,000. You are required to calculate selling price per unit to earn a profit of 10% on sales value, break even point and margin of safety. If the selling price is reduced by the company by 10%, demand is expected to increase by 5,000 units, then what will be its impact on profit, BEP and MOS? Calculate MOS if profit is rupees 64,000. This is also a fairly easy question. I'll quickly show you how I had written in my certified copy so that you get an understanding of how to present in the examination. What I did, I just assumed that the total sales in rupees would be X. So let total sales be X. PV ratio is what? X minus 20,000 into 20. So PV ratio is nothing but sales minus variable cost whole upon sales into 100. Sales minus variable cost is nothing but contribution. Thus PV ratio is X minus 4 lakh whole upon X into 100. Also, we know that sales is what? Fixed cost plus desired profit upon PV ratio. So what I did over here, sales is what? X. We have assumed it to be X. We have the data of fixed cost, which is 3,20,000. Desired profit is what? 10% of sales, which is 0.1x whole upon PV ratio, and PV ratio is nothing but X minus 4 lakh whole upon X. Okay. So simply you just have to solve this equation. X would go up and X would get cancelled. So 1 is equal to 3,20,000 plus 0.1x whole upon X minus 4 lakh. We take X minus 4 lakh here. X minus 4 lakh is what? 3,20,000 plus 0.1x, and therefore X is rupees 8 lakhs. X is sales. Therefore sales is rupees 8 lakhs. We have the total number of units with us. Simply dividing the total sales by the total number of units gives us the selling price per unit, which is rupees 40 per unit. Okay, this was a long method which I had adopted, and I was able to score 1 mark over here. Break even point is what? Fixed cost upon contribution per unit. You have the fixed cost, you have the contribution per unit because you have the selling price per unit now. Variable cost per unit is given in the question, and therefore you can easily calculate the break even point in units. Let's calculate the break-even point in rupees now. Multiplying the break-even point in rupees by the number of units would give you the break-even point in rupees. See, I have not written rupees 16,000 into 40, 16,000 units into rupees 40 per unit. I have simply written 16,000 into 40, which clearly means that 16,000 is nothing but the number of units and 40 is the selling price per unit. You don't have to write rupees or per unit all the time. So 6,40,000 is the break-even point in rupees. You get the break-even point. You now have to compute the margin of safety, which is nothing but profit upon PV ratio. The profit is 10% of sales. Sales are 8 lakh, so the profit is 80,000 whole upon PV ratio. PV ratio is what? Contribution upon sales into 100. The amount of contribution is 40 minus 20, which is 20 whole upon selling price per unit, which is 40, which gives me a PV ratio of 50%. So 80,000 upon 50% gives me an amount of rupees 1,60,000. Okay, this can also be computed as actual sales minus BEP sales. Actual sales are how much? 8 lakh minus break-even sales are how much? 6,40,000, which is nothing but 1.6 lakhs. We are now required to compute the new selling price per unit. Okay, if the not the new selling price per unit, the new break-even point MOS. If the revised selling price decreases by 10%, if the revised selling price decreases by 10%, your new selling price would be 40 minus 10%, which is rupees 36. The profit would now be selling price per unit, which is 36 minus 20, which is the variable cost per unit. The units should have increased by 5,000, which is 25,000, and the fixed cost has remained the same. So the new profit is rupees 80,000. Okay, the profit will remain the same as before. Now we are required to compute the break-even point in units, which is fixed cost upon contribution per unit. Fixed cost is 3,20,000 whole upon contribution per unit, which is 36 minus 20. This is nothing but the contribution per unit. Simply dividing 3,20,000 by 16 gives us 20,000 units. Multiply 20,000 units by the selling price per unit of rupees 36 to get the total break-even point in rupees. The break-even point in rupees will therefore increase by rupees 80,000. Okay, and then let's calculate the revised margin of safety, which is nothing but actual sales minus break-even sales. Actual sales are what? 25,000 units into rupees 36 per unit minus break-even sales we have already computed in the earlier subpart in the last page, and subtracting the break-even sales from the actual sales would give me the margin of safety as rupees 1,80,000. This is the margin of safety, and thus the margin of safety will increase by rupees 20,000. Okay, see how I have scored 1 mark and 1 mark each for the presentation. Let's compute the new margin of safety now. Let's recall the question. Calculate the margin of safety if profit is 64,000. Okay, if the profit is 64,000, then calculate the margin of safety. So MOS is what? Profit upon PV ratio. The profit is now 64,000 and PV ratio we have to assume that it is the same. Even though the profit has changed, we are assuming that the PV ratio is the same because the selling price per unit and the variable cost per unit has not changed at all. Thus, the margin of safety would be profit 64,000 upon PV ratio, which is 50%, which brings me an answer of rupees 1,28,000. See, I have written an assumption here that the selling price is not reduced and PV ratio is calculated as per the original selling price. This is an important assumption which you should state in your examination. Okay, let's solve the next subpart of this question. The following figures and ratios pertain to ABG Company Limited for the year ending 31st March 2016. Annual sales GP ratio, fixed asset turnover ratio, stock turnover ratio is given, quick ratio, current ratio is also given, debts collection period, reserves and surplus to share capital is given, capital gearing ratio is given, and fixed assets to net worth is also given. You are required to prepare the balance sheet as at 31st March 2016 based on the above information. Assume 360 days in a year. I'll quickly show you the answer in my particular certified copy. This is the data which we have, and let's see the answer now. Sales are given as rupees 50 lakhs. Gross profit is what? 28% of sales. Therefore, 28% of 50 lakhs is how much? It is rupees 14 lakhs. The cost of goods sold can now be computed by subtracting the gross profit from the sales. So gross profit is 50 lakhs, gross profit is 14 lakhs, sales is 50 lakhs, therefore the cost of goods sold turn out to be 36 lakhs. Fixed asset turnover ratio is given as 1.5. Fixed asset turnover ratio is 1.5 and therefore cost of goods sold upon fixed assets is equal to 1.5. Therefore the fixed assets can now be computed because we have the cost of goods sold, and multiplying 1.5 and dividing it by cost of goods sold would fetch us the fixed assets, which is rupees 24 lakhs. The formula of fixed asset turnover ratio, if I remember, it was sales upon fixed assets, but an alternative formula has been used in the practice manual. If you see, cost of goods sold upon fixed assets, so this is also an alternative formula of fixed asset turnover ratio, because of which you can compute fixed assets. The stock turnover ratio is given as 6. Stock turnover ratio is what? Cost of goods sold upon closing inventory, which is 6. You have the cost of goods sold, therefore you can get the closing inventory by dividing the cost of goods sold by the stock turnover ratio, which is 36 lakhs upon 6 to get the final amount of rupees 6 lakhs. Okay, I have prepared a note. I have written a note over here. In the absence of opening inventory, it has been assumed that both opening and closing inventory are same, because stock turnover ratio uses average inventory in the denominator, if you remember, and average inventory is what? Opening inventory plus closing inventory whole upon 2. Assuming that the opening and closing inventory are same, the average inventory is also going to remain the same. Next, fixed asset to net worth ratio is given as 1.2 is to 1. We have the fixed assets as rupees 24 lakh, which we have already computed. Upon net worth is 1.2. Therefore, the net worth is what? 24 lakh upon 1.2, which is rupees 20 lakhs. This is the net worth. Net worth means the total share capital plus reserves and surplus. Reserves and surplus to share capital is what? 0.6 is to 1. Therefore, reserves and surplus whole upon share capital is equal to 0.6. Thus, reserves and surplus is 0.6 into share capital. So, reserves are 60% of share capital. Net worth is what? It is share capital plus reserves and surplus. Therefore, 20 lakhs is share capital plus 0.6 into share capital. Okay, share capital plus reserves and surplus. Reserves and surplus are what? 0.6 into share capital. This has been bought over here, and therefore the share capital is 12 lakh 50,000. 60% of 12 lakh 50,000 amounts to 7 lakh 50,000, which is nothing but the reserves and surplus. Okay, there was half mark for share capital. There was half mark for computing reserves and surplus. Next, we have the debtors collection period as 45 days. Debtors upon sales into 360 is equal to the debtors collection period. We have the amount of sales with us. We have 360, that is the number of days in a year, and we have the debtors collection period. Therefore, we can get the amount of debtors as rupees 6,25,000 by simply multiplying 45 by 50 lakhs and dividing it by 360. This was also for half mark. The current ratio is given as 1.5. Therefore, current assets upon current liabilities is 1.5, and thus current assets is how much? 1.5 of current liabilities. The quick ratio is also given as 1. Current assets minus stock upon CL is nothing but the quick ratio. In quick ratio, we test the liquidity. Since stock is not a liquid asset, we subtract stock from the current asset divided by the current liabilities to get the quick ratio. So current assets minus stock whole upon current liabilities is equal to 1. Current assets is how much? It is 1.5 CL. I have bought it over here, minus stock, which is rupees 6 lakhs, which we have already computed in the stock turnover ratio formula. It was given closing inventory. Whole upon current liabilities is equal to 1. Once we compute this, CL can be taken over here. 6 lakhs is nothing but 0.5 CL. Therefore, CL is rupees 12 lakhs. And therefore, current assets is 1.5 into 12 lakhs, which amounts to rupees 18 lakhs. The capital gearing ratio is given as 0.5. Capital gearing ratio is what? Debentures upon equity. Debt upon equity is nothing but the gearing ratio. There are various formula of gearing ratio. Okay, you have to remember the formula which is given in the practice manual, which is debt upon equity. This amounts to 0.5. Therefore, debentures upon equity shareholders funds are nothing but 20 lakh, which is the net worth, is equal to 0.5. Therefore, debentures are rupees 10 lakhs. We can now compute the cash balance. The cash balance is nothing but current assets minus stock minus debtors. We have the amount of current assets with us, we have the amount of stock, we have the amount of debtors with us. Subtracting stock and debtors from the current assets would fetch us the amount of cash, which is rupees 5,75,000. And now we have all the data which is required to compute the balance sheet of this particular company, and we can now easily compute the balance sheet and draw it as per the required information given. Okay, the current liabilities, in current liabilities, creditors have been assumed as total current liabilities, and in inventory only three current assets are there, namely inventory, debtors and cash. This is how I have presented the balance sheet. Okay, I have received 7.5 marks over here. Okay, so I'll have to analyze where I've lost for zero point 0.5 marks, mainly in some calculations error. So I was able to score almost all the marks in this question as well. I lost half a mark over here. Okay, let's see question number 6 now. Yeah, question number 6. Okay, so this is a standard costing sum. This is also an easy question. If you are aware with the formula and the concepts, I think you are going to ace this particular question as well. The following information is available from the cost records of a company for the month of July 2016. Material purchased, material consumed, actual wages paid for, fixed factory overheads incurred, fixed factory overheads budgeted, units produced, standard rates and material prices are also given. You are required to calculate material price variance, material usage variance, labor rate, labor efficiency, fixed overhead expenditure efficiency and capacity variance. This is also a fairly easy question wherein you have to use your formulae which you have memorized in your classes, and once you memorize the formula you simply have to substitute the figures given in the question. Let's see how I had solved this particular question. See, it is very important that you write the formulae of each and every variance. MPV is what? Material price variance, which is SR minus AR into actual quantity purchased. SR is nothing but the standard rate which is given in the question. Actual rate can be computed by dividing 90,000 by 22,000. If you see, 90,000 is what materials purchased and 22,000 are the pieces. Simply dividing 90,000 by 22,000 would fetch you the actual rate multiplied by the actual quantity purchased in order to calculate the material price variance. Since standard rate was more than the actual rate, this turns to be a favorable variance. Always remember that variances are in rupees terms, so you are required to write rupees in front of all variances, be it favorable or be it adverse. Okay, this is also very important. If your presentation is not neat or clean, examiner can deduct your marks if you have not written rupees in your answer sheet. Let's calculate the material usage variance now. Material usage variance is simply SQ minus AQ consumed into SR. The standard quantity is what? 1900 into 10. Let's see what 1900 is. See, 1900 is the units produced multiplied by 10 pieces per unit. I'm sorry. Okay, 1900 into 10 is the standard quantity subtracted from the actual quantity consumed given in the question, multiply by the standard rate to get the material usage variance. Then we have labor rate variance, which is nothing but SR minus AR into actual hours paid for. Standard rate is given in the question. We can compute actual rate similarly as we calculated the actual prices for raw materials multiplied by the actual hours paid for to get the labor rate variance of 5150 favorable. Okay, there is 1 mark to each and every question. Labor efficiency variance is what SH minus actual hours worked into SR. The standard hours can now be computed similarly, 1900 into 2.5 minus 5150 into 6 to get 2400 adverse. It means that our labor were not that efficient as we had expected them to be. The fixed overhead expenditure variance can be computed by subtracting the actual overheads minus from the budgeted overheads. The actual overheads are 46,000. See, the actual overheads are 46,000. They are the overheads incurred, and the budgeted overheads are 42,000. Subtract 42 and 46 to get the answer to this variance, which is 4,000. Okay, so 4,000 adverse is the answer because the actual overheads are more than the budgeted overheads. Since the actual overheads are more, it means that my company did not perform well, and this is an adverse variance. Let's calculate the fixed overhead efficiency variance. It is nothing but budgeted hours for actual units minus actual hours worked into the absorption rate per hour. Budgeted hours for actual units is what? Actual units produced are 1900. For 1 unit, you need 2.5 budgeted hours. Subtract actual hours worked, which is given in the question, multiplied by the absorption rate per hour. How this absorption rate has been calculated? See, here I have written the working note. So absorption rate per hour is rupees 8, which is given in the question, I suppose. Let me check. Yeah, overheads is what? Rupees 8 per labor hour. So this is given in the question. This means that the absorption rate per hour has already been given in the question. Now absorption rate is given in the question, simply multiply it and you get the fixed overhead efficiency variance, which is rupees 3200 adverse. And lastly, fixed overhead capacity variance, actual hours minus budgeted hours into absorption rate per hour. Okay, absorption rate per hour is given as rupees 8. Absorption rate per hour is what? Budgeted fixed overheads upon budgeted hours. Budgeted fixed overheads are already given in the question as 42,000. We can now compute the budgeted hours by dividing 42,000 by 8, and the budgeted hours now come to 5,250 hours. Okay. Therefore, the fixed overhead capacity variance is what? Actual hours, which is given in the question as 5150, minus the budgeted hours, which we have now computed, that is 5250, into 8, which is nothing but the absorption rate per hour. This is rupees 800 adverse. If you see, there were 7 questions involved in the standard costing question, and there was 1 mark to each question, but the question was of 8 marks. I seriously don't know why I have lost 1 mark in this question. I suppose that this question should be of 2 marks because there is an adjustment which is involved in this question. I think 2 marks should be there for this question, and the examiner has ended up giving me only 1 mark for this sub question, and therefore I was able to score only 7 out of 8 in this question. I don't see any reason of deducting a mark over here, and I think that I should have got 8 out of 8 in this particular question. Okay, so this is the answer to the standard costing question. But then never mind, I have scored very good in the theory part. I think the examiner was very lenient enough to give me all the marks in theory, so I think he has already compensated me over there. Okay, so let's now solve the next question, question number 6b. Following is the capital structure of RBT Limited as on 31st March 2016. The book value and the market value of equity shares, retained earnings, preference shares and debentures have been given. Market price of equity shares is rupees 40 per share, and it is expected that a dividend of rupees 4 per share would be declared. The dividend per share is expected to grow at the rate of 8% every year. Income tax rate applicable to the company is 40% and shareholders' personal income tax rate is 20%. You are required to calculate the cost of capital. You are required to calculate the weighted average cost of capital on the basis of book value weights and the weighted average cost of capital on the basis of market value weights. Okay, let's calculate the cost of capital. I'll quickly show you my certified copies answer. The cost of equity is what? D1 upon P naught plus G. The cost of equity is D1 upon P naught plus G. Simply substituting the figures in the D1, P naught and G, we get the cost of equity as 18%. Okay, the cost of retained earnings is what? Cost of equity into 1 minus TP, which is nothing but shareholders' personal tax rate. Okay, this is very important. This is the personal tax rate of the shareholders, which is 20%. So remember that the retained earnings are nothing but the earnings of the shareholders. They would get this in the form of dividend or selling their security. Once they get the dividend or security, the personal tax applicable to the shareholders is 20%. Therefore, they would be paying 20% to the government, and the cost of retained earnings for them would be cost of equity into 1 minus 20%, which is cost of equity into 80%. So the cost of reserves for them would be 14.4%. Okay. Let's compute the cost of preference shares, which is nothing but the preference dividend upon the net proceeds into 100. So preference dividend is 11%, so that is nothing but the cost of preference dividend. Let's compute the cost of debt, that is interest into 1 minus tax whole upon net proceeds into 100. Interest is 14% into 1 minus zero point 0.4. This is not the shareholder's personal tax. In fact, it is company's tax. Okay, this is the company's tax rate which would be applicable, and thus the cost of debt comes out to 8.4%. Let's calculate the cost of capital based on the book value weights now. The book value have already been given in the question. Simply multiplying the cost of capital by the book value weights would give us the weighted average cost of capital. This is the proportion, which is nothing but book value whole upon the total book value, and multiply the cost by the proportion to get the weighted average cost of capital. Okay. Similarly, in subpart 3, you have to use market value as the weights. Once you use market value as the weights, you would get a different answer because the market value of equity is now different. Use these market value weights which are given in the question, and therefore you get the weighted average cost of capital as 15.276%. Okay, I have also written a note that it has been assumed here that cost of retained earnings has already been reflected in the market value weights and hence not been taken into consideration while calculating the WACC using market value weights. This is an important assumption. The cost of reserves and surplus is already included in this market value. Okay, so cost of reserves and surplus. Okay, this is very important. Let's solve the next question now. Question number 3. Question number 3. The trading and profit and loss account of a company for the year ended 31st March 2016 is as under. Trading and profit and loss account is given. Materials, wages, factory expenses, all the expenses have been given. Sales, closing stock, and the dividend have been given. In the cost accounts, factory expenses have been allocated to production at 20% of prime cost. Administrative expenses absorbed at 10% of factory cost, and selling expenses charged at rupees 10 per unit sold. Prepare the costing profit and loss account of the company and reconcile the profit loss with the profit as shown in the financial accounts. This is also fairly an easy question. You simply have to prepare the costing P&L account and reconcile the actual profit shown in the financials as compared to the profits shown in the costing profit and loss account. I'll quickly show you the certified copy. See, costing P&L account is nothing but all the costs which are absorbed. So this is an account which is prepared by the costing department, and all the budgeted expenses have been taken into consideration. So material, wages, prime cost is 44,60,000. Then factory expenses are 20% of prime cost, which is 8,92,000. So 1 mark is for factory expenses. Then the total factory cost is there. Administrative cost is nothing but 10% of factory cost, so 1 mark for admin cost computation. We get the factory cost of production. Subtract the closing stock of finished goods. Okay, this is an important part. You have to divide 5887,200, which is the factory cost of production, by 52,000. 52,000 is nothing but the total number of units produced, 50,000 plus 2,000 units, and multiply it by the closing stock. I'll just quickly show you how 52,000 is come. See, the amount of sales is 50,000 units and the closing stock is 2,000 units. Okay, since the closing stock is 2,000 units and assuming that the opening stock is 0, it means that we have produced 52,000 units in the entire year. Why? Because out of 52,000 units, we have already sold 50,000 units, which means that we have a closing stock of 2,000 units lying with us. Okay, this is how 52,000 came. So 58,87,200 upon 52,000 is the cost per unit multiplied by the closing stock to get the total cost of closing stock. Subtract it from the factory cost of production to get the cost of production. Then we have selling and distribution expenses, which is 50,000 into 10. This gives us the cost of sales, and profit is nothing but the balancing figure. We have the amount of sales also with us. Okay, I hope the presentation is clear to all of you. See, what you have to do, you simply have to write the costing P&L account, particular rupees, particular rupees. I must say at this point of time that even if you don't draw these lines and your presentation is neat enough, which is understandable by the examiner, there is no problem at all. Okay, no need to draw these lines if you don't have time. This is a very important tip which I would like to give all of you. Or you seriously or you're in a position that you seriously want to draw a line, then what you can do is that you can use a pen instead of a pencil, because that would save a lot of time of yours. Okay, this is the costing profit and loss account. Then let's show the reconciliation. This is also easy. Profit as per cost accounting as computed above. Add the dividend received. This is not included in the costing P&L account. Okay, what you have to do, you have to match the cost accounting profit and the financial accounting profit. So what you can do, you should keep your hands at the same level, then start with profit as per cost accounting, then add those items which are income in the financial accounting statement but are not considered in the cost accounting. Okay, so whatever extra income has been considered in the financial accounts, you have to add it back to the profit as per cost accounting, so that you can reach to the profit as per financial accounting. Similarly, whichever expenses are lesser in the financial accounts, you have to add them once again, because that would reconcile your profits. See, the admin expenses were over absorbed by 55,000. In costing and P&L account, we had charged an excess amount of 55,000. I would tell you how this 55,000 has come. See, the admin expenses are how much? 5,35,200. And if we see in the question, the actual admin expenses are 4,80,200. Simply subtracting both these amounts, we get the under absorbed admin expenses. Okay, so this is how we have calculated all the over and under absorbed expenses. The closing stock has been overvalued. The factory expenses are under absorbed. Preliminary expenses have been written off. Okay, and once you subtract and add all these details, you can get the profit as per financial accounts. See, there is half mark for each and every adjustment. Half, half, one, half. Okay, so there are marks for each and every step, and I was able to score 8 out of 8 marks in this particular question. Okay, I hope the analysis is being useful for all of you. Let's move on to the next question now. Question number 3B. India Limited requires rupees 50 lakh for a new plant. This plant is expected to yield EBIT of rupees 10 lakhs. While deciding about the financial plan, the company considers the objective of maximizing earnings per share. It has three alternatives to finance the project: by raising debt of rupees 5 lakhs or rupees 20 lakhs or rupees 30 lakhs, and the balance in each case by issuing equity shares. Okay, it requires rupees 50 lakhs, and it is considering three options, namely raising debt of 5 lakhs, 20 lakhs and 30 lakhs in all the three options, and the balance amount would be issued by the equity shares. The company share is currently selling at rupees 150 but is expected to decline to rupees 125 in case the funds are borrowed in excess of rupees 20 lakhs. The funds can be borrowed at the rate of 9% up to 5 lakh, 14% over 5 lakh and up to 20 lakh, and at 19% over 20 lakhs. The tax rate applicable to the company is 40%. Which form of financing should the company choose? Show EPS amount up to 2 decimal points. This is also a very easy question. Let me show you the answer sheet. Okay, see what I did, I just wrote down the amount of equity and debt in all the options. These are the three possible options. FP is nothing but financial plan. So in financial plan 1, you have a debt of 5 lakhs and equity of 45 lakhs. Okay, you have to compute the earnings per share in all the three options. This is very easy question. You just have to compute the earnings per share. EBIT has been given as rupees 10 lakhs. Subtract the interest. I would just tell you how I have calculated the interest. In fact, I'll just tell you now only. See, the interest has been calculated as slab rates. Okay, so remember, when you have a question like this, the interest has to be computed as if you are computing amount of tax as per the Income Tax Act. As per the Income Tax Act, you compute the amount of tax as per slab rates. So for the first 5 lakhs, the interest rate is 9%. If the debt is 20 lakhs, for the first 5 lakhs, the interest rate is 9%, and for the next 15 lakhs, the interest rate is 14%. If the debt is 15 plus 5, 30 lakhs, then the amount of interest would be 9% for 5 lakhs, 14% for the next 15 lakhs, and 19% for the next 10 lakhs. I would quickly tell you the logic behind using the slab rates. Assuming that you are taking a loan of 20 lakhs, you would be very smart enough to take a loan of 5 lakh at the rate of 9% and take a separate loan of 15 lakhs at the rate of 14%. No one would be foolish enough to take the entire loan of 20 lakhs at 14%. And that is the reason that we are using slab rates while calculating the amount of interest. After subtracting interest, you get the EBT. Subtract tax at 40%, you get the earnings after tax. Divide by the number of equity shares. The number of equity shares are nothing but the total amount of equity in each plan divided by the market price, which is 150, 150 and 125 respectively. See why 125 has been used over here. I would quickly show you the note. The market price in FP3 will be 125 as the debt exceeds rupees 20 lakhs. You have to be very careful enough to adjust this particular market price so that you don't lose marks in your examination. And finally, there is 1 mark for the recommendation, which is nothing but the conclusion. There is a mark for a conclusion always, so remember, you are writing the conclusion in every question. The company should opt for FP2, that is debt of 20 lakhs and equity of 30 lakh, since it yields the maximum EPS of rupees 22.35, which is comparatively higher than the other two plans. Okay, this is how you present your answer in the examination. Once again, if you don't draw these lines, it's absolutely all right. I had a lot of time in my costing FM paper. To be very frank, I had finished off this paper 15 minutes before my main time, so I had finished off this paper by 4:45 p.m. and since I had a lot of time, I drew these lines at like in the last 15 minutes only. Okay, so not necessary to draw lines. I am repeating this once again. If you have time, then and only then you should draw these lines. Okay, let's go to the theory part now. I've scored good marks in theory question 7A. Okay, let's see question number 7. Answer any four of the following. What is meant by job costing and give examples of industries where it is used. Okay, so job costing is nothing but ascertainment of cost of each job. I have written the definition first. Then it is as per customer specific requirements. See how I have underlined each and every keyword over here. Okay, cost is to be regarded as the profit. So I have underlined each and every keyword so that the examiner reads only the keywords rather than the whole answer. It is widely used when there is no intention to produce otherwise but is to be produced as per customer's order. I should have underlined here the keywords as per customer's order. A price is then quoted to the customer for the corresponding job, which is inclusive of profit. Industries where it is used, I have written this in bullet points. Tailor-made garments, motor workshops, interior decoration, and I've scored 4 out of 4 in this question. This question has not been scanned properly. Let's read the question 7B. Give the method of costing and the unit of cost against the undernoted industries. Okay, this is also easy. Road transport, steel, bicycles, and bridge construction. So road transport, the industry method of costing used is operating and the unit is passenger kilometer. For steel, it is the method of costing. I had written it as single, but the answer was different, and the unit is nothing but ton. So bicycles is multiple costing, unit is number, and bridge construction is contract costing, and the unit is bridge. Okay, so if you see, I have got 3.5 marks. So there was half mark for each and every statement which you are writing. Half mark for every word. Okay. So be careful and write the correct answers. Let's check what is the answer for steel. What is the method of costing for steel? I don't remember. Question 7B. Okay, it is process costing, single or unit costing. Okay, it is process costing, unit or single costing. So I have written it as single costing. Okay, so I have written it as single costing. See, the answer contains single costing. I have written it as single costing in my answer sheet also, but still I have been given this as wrong. Okay, so I would have scored 4 out of 4 marks, so 3.5 out of 4. I would have fetched 0.5 marks more. Okay, that's all right. A lot of time has elapsed now from November 2016. Next question asked us to define bridge finance. So if you see, like it's not that clear because the scanning has not been done proper from the institute's end. I would quickly show you. I had underlined the keywords pending disbursement, long-term loan, then because of tie-up participation, etc. In order not to lose the further time, this is the keyword bridge finance is used. It is to be repaid out of the proceeds of long-term loan and it is secured by personal guarantees. Okay, generally the rate of interest is higher. This is how I had underlined all the keywords and I was able to score 2 out of 2 marks in this question. Then I was required to define conversion cost. Again, I just underlined the keywords conversion of raw materials into FG. For example, direct labor, direct material, and they are to be charged to the production overhead account generally. I lost 1 mark over here, I don't know why. So I scored 3 out of 4 mark over here. Then the next question was on time value of money. Time value of money emphasizes that a rupee worth received today is more valuable than a rupee received in future. This is because of all the reasons. Risk, preference for present consumption, inflation. So I scored 4 on 4 mark in this question also. And investment opportunities. See, I have not started the question on the next page, so it's alright if you don't start the sub question on the next page. Many of the students start this on the next page, but this just wastes their time, and you would be you would need a supplement if you're starting every sub question also on a new page. Therefore, I didn't start this question on a new page, and I was able to complete the paper in 28-29 pages only. I didn't use a supplement for any paper. Let's see question number 5 now. Question number 5 is also a theory question. If you see and if you carefully look at the strategy, I solved all the practical questions first and then I switched over to the theoretical questions. Both the theoretical questions of 16 marks each, I have solved them at the end of my examination, that is at end of the answer sheet. Write short notes on sunk cost and opportunity cost. So sunk cost is cost which has already been incurred, irrelevant. It is for the purpose. It is irrelevant for the purpose of decision making, and it is nothing but a historic cost. Then give an example. WDV and original cost are sunk cost while selling the old machine. Similarly, opportunity cost is the next best alternative foregone. It is the value of sacrifice an individual does. It is not recorded in the financial books. It does not involve an actual outflow of cash. Give an example. If a person withdraws money from his bank account to purchase a fixed asset, the rate of interest on the deposit will be treated as his opportunity cost. I was able to score 4 out of 4 marks in this question because I had underlined the keywords and I had written the points up to the mark. What is the next question? What is meant by cost center and what are the different type of cost centers? List the emerging issues affecting the future role of CFO and state advantages of debt securitization. Let's quickly see what I've written. The cost center is nothing but a place where costs are allocated. Underline the keywords. Again, there are two types of cost centers, personal and impersonal. Define both of them and fetch 4 out of 4 marks. This was also a relatively easier question. Then what are the roles, what are the issues affecting the future role of CFO? First, define who is a CFO. He takes major decisions such as investment, dividend decisions, and investment capital structure decisions. The issues which are affecting the future role are globalization, regulation, technology, and risk and talent. These are the main roles. See, I have been telling you again and again, even if you write these keywords, the examiner is definitely going to give you a mark. Just explain these keywords in your own words. That is not going to hamper any marks which you are going to score. Okay, if you write globalization as per your general understanding, write the definition of globalization and come, and trust me, you will score 1 out of 1 mark for the globalization definition. If you know the definition of technology, just write the word tally and just write that this is going to affect his future decisions. Write technology, write risk and talent. Just remember the keywords. Once you remember the keywords, it would be very easy for all of you to explain it in your own words. You know the general English meaning of risk, of talent. Once you write it in your own words, trust me, you are going to score full marks in this question also. So I was able to score 4 out of 4 marks in this question as well. Advantages of debt securitization. It is nothing but recycling of funds, and against this pool of asset financial securities are issued. The advantages, I have just written them. See, there is 1 mark for the definition also. Even if I have not written one advantage, and if I would have written 3 advantages, I would have scored 4 out of 4 marks. See, 1 mark is for definition. Then advantages is what? Off balance sheet financing, converts the illiquid assets into liquid portfolio, better balance sheet management, the credit rating enhances. So you just have to write these bullet points. You would score 4 out of 4 marks in the theory question as well. Okay, I hope this analysis of certified copies was useful for all of you. In case you have any queries, do comment it in the below comment box. I would be happy to help and happy to assist all of you. I hope this presentation was useful for all of you and there were a lot of learnings from this particular lesson. Thank you so much for watching this video. Stay safe, take care. Hope to see you in the next video very soon. Thanks a lot.